I think every single person in the United States could be diagnosed with attention deficit disorder if you chose to do that.
Agreed.
So,
100%.
but it isn't about having a disorder. It's about the fact that we don't blame a log for burning in a fire.
Yes.
The world is so distracting. So if you're distracted, welcome to humanity is what we're talking about.
The world is filled with fluffy, ethereal podcasts about spiritual growth, transformation, and inspiration. Yeah, this isn't one of them. No, Find Your Flow is about what happens when life stops working. So let's get into it. No filters, no scripts, no curated sound bites, no fluff whatsoever, just flow. Hello and welcome into the studio with me today, Dr. Fred Moss. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So am I. I love coming at the subject of therapy and psychiatry, psychology, all from a different perspective. I love that. I can't wait to find out what non-diagnosing physician is. I want to learn all about that. But first things first, what does flow mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, thanks for prompting me beforehand. But I think what we really have here when we're looking at flow is being in like a peak state, like being in a flow state allows me to be in tune with the world, in tune with the rhythms of the world, in tune with uh, the beat and um, I guess the movement of how things are working. Like things have a natural movement, of course. Everything is in perpetual movement. And with respect to flow, I know like this morning, it's a very interesting question to ask me this morning. I woke up this morning, I did a standing meditation for about 12 minutes. I did a sitting meditation for about 20 minutes. I did a little bit of Tai Chi. I drank and made my celery juice. I took my homeopathic remedy. I did my cold showers. And I was wondering, as I was doing all this, all within the last hour, what was I doing? I was asking myself, what are you doing? Why are you entering the day, this crazy life of mine? Why am I entering it so calm and fluid? And the answer was to capture my flow, to actually get
Mm,
aligned with how my world is going. So in the soft steps that I took, rather than doing, a bunch of pull-ups or a bunch of push-ups or running at
mhm.
full speed, there was something about really just easing into the day. And it has left me now with, the next obvious question, which, okay, Fred, well, what is flow to you? And so I now get to come into this conversation and speak to the fluid nature of the world that when you capture it, you get to be like a leaf, like a intentional leaf in a river, rather
Mm.
than just simply being caught up and swept over the rocks.
What a beautiful visual. It's how I see flow for myself, but more so that I am the water that gets to flow and gets to slosh up against these sides and go over and under and around rocks and plant life and even have other beings float along with me.
Absolutely.
I absolutely love that definition. And I got caught up in flow this morning. So, listeners, I was a few minutes late, which I can't ever say never now, but I'm rarely ever late. But truly, this morning, I got caught up in the flow of how my morning and my days usually start off. And I wound up late for our recording here. So I appreciate that you gave this some serious consideration this morning. I appreciate your definition. It brings everything down into this beautiful, soft lull to be able to have a conversation. Can you ever remember, Dr. Fred, a time where you were not in flow, where your life sort of felt stuck?
Well, it's a large question, and there's multiple different angles, multiple different points of view, at
Sure.
the global scale, at the essential scale, have I felt out of flow? I'd say yes. I'd say that especially in the physician world, in the medical world, there was, as I now step into being more aligned with my core self, my core values, my true beliefs, my experience and my, passion and my education. And I find myself aligning myself with my actions and my speech and my thoughts all aligned with each other, I notice that I'm coming out of a space, at the over as at a annual level, like at a decade level. I'm coming out of a space where I have been out of flow. There was a significant amount of time where I now look back at it and call it essentially duplicitous, meaning that my actions were not consistent with my thoughts and my ideas.
Mm,
And, was the undoctor, not the non-diagnosing, by the way. It's more about undiagnosing.
okay.
And as the undoctor, what that is a response to being out of flow, because as a doctor, when taking on the typecast role of what a physician or what a psychiatrist presently is, if one looks it up in Wikipedia or in Google right now, you'll see that a psychiatrist has essentially two functions. Number one, to diagnose, number two, to medicate. And I don't like doing either of those things. I very much don't like doing, I refrain from using the word hate, but I really seriously don't like doing either of those things. I don't see any value in either diagnosing or in most cases medicating anybody. So I don't see, I when I did it anyways, because that's how I was taught, or that's how the industry requires, or that's what the industry, you'll say, commands or demands, or at least at the very least highly requests me to do, is to diagnose somebody with some sort of alphabet soup of a psychiatric condition, and then treat them with a medication that I suspect is not going to help very much and often hurts. That would be something that I was so misaligned with, that I would say, of course, during that time when I was daily sort of biting my tongue, crossing my fingers behind my back and wishing that I didn't have to do what I was presently doing by giving someone a diagnosis and somehow confirming their notion that they were defective, deficient, afflicted, sick, mentally
Mm,
ill, with some syndrome or some deficiency, when I don't really believe that at all. So every time I did that, there was like a zing inside of my flow. There was a
yeah.
blockage of my chi, if you will, a
Yeah.
blockage of my flow. And that was a very substantial period of time, and has caused me to uncoil or recoil into being the undoctor, into being somebody who is about welcome to humanity and about communication more than anything else, because the psychiatrist's role, which used to be based in communication, is no
Mhm.
longer based in communication at all. It's now based in simply dropping a label or a syndrome or a condition, a diagnosis, and then treating with a pre-described treatment plan that is usually designed by someone with ulterior motives and at least secondary gain, and then often giving medications which make people, which do not do what they're marketed to do at the very least, but leave people often worse off than when they started inadvertently. Like they may not even notice it. That's being out of flow and stepping into myself, knowing that communication and connection is at the heart of all healing. And then using that as my therapeutic baseline, my therapeutic foundation, that if I work hard to get myself out of the way and connect with another person, there will be nothing, no more magical or powerful medication ever defined anywhere that is more profound than that of the essence of a human connection.
All of that, all of that. I speak from personal experience because when I had my spinal injury, a lot of the doctors, all of the doctors, really had no idea what was going on with me. So I kept going to ER after ER and specialist after specialist until finally my neurologist told me he thought that I had anxiety and I needed to see a psychiatrist. And sitting there in the ER, a psychiatrist came down to talk to me. And I kept saying, I really do feel like there's something wrong at the base of my skull. I can sense a blockage there. And I really do need somebody to take me seriously. And the psychiatrist said, I think you have anxiety. And because of your anxiety, you have a migraine. And because of that, we're going to give you an antipsychotic. And I'm going to ask you to take this until you feel suicidal. And that's when you know that you'll be finished with the medication and your migraine should be gone and you can start weaning yourself off the medication. That seemed like lunacy to me, but I was in dire straits and I didn't know what was happening. All I knew was that I was in pain. And so I took that medication and fast forward a few doses, I sat trapped in my powder room with my husband sitting against the door because I was telling him I'm going out the window. I'm going to go jump out the window and I can't tell you why. I just know I have to do it. And he said, okay, so we're going to stop the medication and see if you're feeling better afterwards. So after that experience, that lovely experience of mine, I said, yeah, I'm kind of done with medication. I understand its place. I understand that there could be a necessity, when you're in triage and you need to treat something very quickly. But I also, with my whole being, believe that the root cause is something maybe traumatic, emotional. There is something that has not been communicated, heard, expressed in some regard that ends up in a physical ailment, a spiritual ailment, an emotional ailment, a mental ailment that I just don't believe you can continuously medicate the symptoms of and think that you are celebrating the whole person. So when I read your bio, when I read your website and I saw what you did, I said, yeah, this guy, yeah, could we maybe amplify his voice, maybe amplify his message? How hard was it for you I was on the other side as the patient screaming into a void and not having anybody listen to me. But as the patient, I could also make the decision to just say, screw it, and not do what any of the doctors told me to do.
Yeah, that's probably what you should have done.
Yeah. So that was my course of action, and then started a very long journey of trying to discover and explore a more holistic practice of what works for me, right? To treat my whole body, mind, soul, my environment, my space, everything got overhauled. What was it like from the doctor's perspective? Because, oh my God, I can't I can't imagine how difficult that must have been.
Which part are you pointing to?
Woo! Not being able to do what you knew was right.
I don't think it's ever gotten to the point where I was unable to do what I knew was right. I don't think it's
Good
ever
for
really
you.
gotten to the point, that I was unable to do what I knew was right. So, the thing about this life is that you always get to choose the next right thing. So, you always get to choose the next right thing. No matter what your situation is, you always get to choose the next right thing. No matter what your history is, no matter what your traumatic experience is, no matter what your wounds are, no matter what your heartbreaks have been, no matter what your injuries or traumas have been, you always get to do the next thing that's right. You always get to do that. So I'm not sure I ever really reached that point. But I know what you're pointing to, and that is that the demands of the industry had me doing things, had me at least, heavily requesting, heavily commanding, or heavily setting out that invitation to do what it was asking me to do rather than what I knew was right. And so the hard part was, in fact, not me not being able to do what was right. It was in the agitate. I always knew what was right. I went into the field because I hated psychiatry. That's why I went into the field in the first place. So, I had dropped out of college and then came back to college another time and tried tried a second industry. I went in first as an engineer, and that wasn't going to work for me because all I really wanted to do was learn how to communicate, and that wasn't exactly happening in engineering school. It was fun. It was okay, but it wasn't serving that purpose. And I dropped out and then, went across the country to Berkeley, California to see if I could figure out what my life was about and a bus. And I had a great summer figuring out what my life was about, but I needed to go back to college. My parents reminded me that that wasn't very sustainable. And then the second time I went back was for this new industry. It was called computers. And the only computer that existed was in all of Michigan was at the University of Michigan. So back to school I went to learn computers and spent that whole semester or two out there with Fortran and COBOL and batch jobs and punch cards and this huge computer building that was like 2 acres big with one computer in it. And it was like, I'm not going to do this the rest of my life either, and dropped out again. But when I came back, after I dropped out, I promised that I would never go back to school. I told my parents and my brothers, never going back to school again. And they were like, "Okay, well, you have to get a job." And I was like, "All right, we'll get a job." And I got a job as a child care worker in an adolescent state mental health facility for boys.
Mm.
And I didn't know that that was going to be a job that I even cared about. I actually took the job because it was right around the corner, and then I had a 3 week orientation. And so I knew that I'd get paid full time to sit in a conference room for 3 weeks. And I felt like, okay, I'm going to take these 3 weeks of paychecks and buy myself a car, and I'm out of here. I'm not even going to stay 4 weeks. So, but in the fourth week, I was convinced to go back up there. I went to Metaview 5, and that was where the 17-year-olds were. And, on that Monday, I had to be convinced to go. My friend Paul convinced me. Uh, by that Monday, I was so scared. And I just went up to the floor and realized all I had to do was communicate and connect with these so called kids who were only 5 years younger than me. All I had to really do is like be with them, is listen, is to connect, is to resonate, is to understand, is to be curious about them, and that healing would take place in a profound level just by doing that. Healing for them, healing for me, healing for everyone.
Mhm.
Began to get very good at this because I really am deeply curious. I was really deeply curious about their lives, about what's going on, not as someone who is higher than or has more than or has something to offer other than my own shared humanity. And when I started sharing humanity with these clients, with these residents, with these, we'll call them patients or customers, healing did take place at a profound level, and I began to really appreciate that job. It was very rewarding to be able to connect and then create healing. All I had to do was connect and create healing. That's what I thought I needed to do my whole life, and that's what I was doing, and it was like resonating. And the thing I didn't like was psychiatry. If Jimmy and Johnny were up too late, or Tony was, Jimmy and Johnny were, let's say, in a fight, or Tony was up too late, then, we'd call the psychiatrist. He'd come down and talk to the child for maybe 4 seconds, and then he'd talk to us for like another 7 seconds. And then he'd go into the nursing station and take out his pen and write something in the chart. And we'd have to go retrieve the child and then hold him down on the ground in the quiet room
Mm.
while we injected him through some sort of, you know, you could, I saw you flinch there, but you need to know that this activity hasn't slowed down in the hospitals in the United States in any way,
Right.
and that by now at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday, this has already happened hundreds of times inside of American hospitals today. Let's get that clear. Let's make that very clear. As disgusting as you may think it is, it's not like those were the old days.
Right.
This is continual. It's happened every day since then to now, hundreds of times in multiple hospitals across this country. This is how we work. This is what happens in psychiatric hospitals. Not to everyone, not to
Right.
everyone, and not all day long, but it happens enough so that I'm very confident that it has already occurred hundreds of times today in the hospitals in the US. But I was disgusted. I found it to be just, heinous. I found it to be barbaric and unacceptable. And I knew that communication was where the real action was. And this was even before the advent of Prozac, which truly changed everything about psychiatry. And I decided to go back to school and become a psychiatrist and make sure that someone was holding up the flag for the importance of communication and connection, because that was being lost, and I could see that in the future. So went back to school one more time and completed my education at Wayne State University while I was working full time as a child care worker. And then, applied to medical school, eventually got accepted in Illinois, in downtown Chicago at Northwestern, and learned a lot about communication in downtown Chicago. Not at Northwestern, by the way. In downtown Chicago is where I learned how to communicate. I spent a lot of time in downtown Chicago when I was supposed to be at Northwestern University Medical School. And because I knew that my job was to learn how to communicate. If I was going to be an effective clinician, I needed to learn how to communicate. I needed to learn how to communicate even more so than learning, biophysiology or
Mhm.
biochemistry or anatomy even. It was like, no, I need to learn how to communicate. And the more I communicate, the more I speak and listen, the more effective I can be as a human being and as a contributing physician. So that's what really happened. And, I have always had a major emphasis and a major focus on somehow finding a way to communicate, even if it wasn't called on for me. In other words, even though I was being asked to diagnose, which I got very good at, supposedly, whatever good means, and medicate, which I also got extremely good at, having written, I don't know, 100,000 plus prescriptions in my life and having over 30,000 clients in my life, I have had the opportunity to diagnose many, many people and the opportunity to medicate many, many people. But in the end, what I've really always been kind of like jucking and jiving to get to is communicating with who's ever over there and at least getting a handle on what their life was about, because that I always knew that if I was going to be a positive impact on anybody, if I was going to make a positive impact and be a positive influence on anybody, I'm certainly going to have to communicate with them and understand what they're going through at some level. And look, you can hear I didn't learn this from formal education. This is very
Right.
important.
Right.
I didn't learn this by reading journals. I didn't learn this by going to medical school. I don't know how to do it any better than anyone just because I have a license. None of those things are required in order to be a great communicator. A great communicator means you have a heart and a soul, you have a mind, you have an interest, you have a curiosity, you're a person, and you can share your humanity with another person. When you can do all that, and most people actually have access to all of that, now you can be a
Mm.
great communicator, and in fact, you too can be an undoctor, meaning you can walk people off the ledge, just like what your terrible experience was. What a heinous experience that is, by the way, and not that much different than the public experience. So the reason I wasn't like, "Oh my god," is because, yep, I hear you. That's the way
Yeah.
the shit goes down sometimes. I
Uh,
hear you. That's just how it goes. Sorry for your luck in running into one of my colleagues who ran you down that track. What an insane track. And I can walk people off a ledge. I can actually walk people off a ledge and teach people how to do it without having a license, without having to go to medical school, without having to have some sort of certification. That isn't where you learn how to be a human anyways. I promise school is not the place you learn how to be a human. Being a human is where healing emanates from. Being a fellow human resonating at a high frequency in your interactions with others causes the profound healing that is way more effective, way more comprehensive, way more profound and thorough than anything that any psychiatric community has ever designed.
I mean, amen to that. Day in, day out, 100%. Amen to that. The
Thank you.
doctor who helped me the most was a chiropractor. And I mean, she gave me an amazing adjustment, but more than that, she looked at me, she saw me, she listened to me and treated me like a human being.
And it's all really, that's the essence. It almost doesn't matter that they adjusted you.
Exactly. It was literally in a moment's time. I had spent 9 months just sort of failing greater and greater in my health. And it was a divine intervention. My sister said, "Oh, I work with someone whose sister has sort of the same symptoms, and she saw this chiropractor. I think maybe you should go. You've seen everybody on the planet." Yes. Okay. I'll do one more. So I go there, but it was my sitting there recoiled and disconnected from literally everybody, right? Because nobody wants to look at someone who hasn't washed their hair, who can't make eye contact, who can't hear, can't really see, can't function, can't sit up. So you become like very outside of society in all ways, shape, and form. Her healing, my healing, began when she knelt in front of me and I felt her hands on my lap. I felt her hands. She didn't adjust me at that point. She touched me and she said, "Tell me what you're feeling." And I told her everything that I was feeling. And she said, "Okay, this is your atlas. We're going to adjust you. You're going to feel very nauseous. And if you have to throw up, just let us know because all of our trash cans are mesh and I'm going to have to get you a bag." And I laughed for the first time in 9 months.
Yeah,
And then she adjusted me. But in that instant,
yeah,
I had hope.
yeah,
Oh my
absolutely.
God, someone saw me.
Exactly.
And
That's the magic right there.
that right there, she didn't pity me. She
Right,
saw me. She
right.
accepted me. I was treated as a human.
Exactly.
And I mean, I was in my 40s at the time. I had had 2 children, and I joked a lot when I birthed the 2 babies. I was nothing more than just like a carrier and people literally looking inside me, and you just lose all sense of humanity. You're like, "Mhm. Yeah, people looked right inside me into my uterus, and I got hands all over me." And you stop considering yourself a body, and you're just this machine birthing something. And it's the something that matters more than you. And I would joke about that, but I never really, and I had instances of racism and blah, blah, blah throughout my life. But there was never a prolonged period of time where I did not feel like a human, right? I could go to school and experience racism, but come home to a Japanese mother and go, okay, this is where I belong. And, I could walk down the street and get yelled at, but then at least like there's my husband who makes me feel like a human again. But this was a prolonged period of time, trying really hard not to curse here, where I was not even viewed as a human. And that was even by the doctors who were supposedly there to help me. The physical therapists, where I was literally just a bunch of check boxes of exercises that were doing nothing for me. But it was one human connecting with another human that started to make all the difference. So how do you do what you do? It's so very different. And I've been to therapists who were very kind and caring and prescribed. I had postpartum depression and I had anxiety as a college student. And I was prescribed medications throughout my life. Here's some Zoloft and this anxiety and take this, that, and the other thing. But I can honestly tell you right here at the age of 53, not on medication, not seeing therapists, but rather getting to meet other humans, getting to connect with other humans, getting to share this experience, and then take this experience and share it with so many other people to
Yeah.
show others around the world that there are options, that
Amazing.
lo and behold, there's another way to do things. Does this
Yeah.
resonate with you? Dip into your heart and soul and see if this works for you. This to me means everything. So, what's it like to be a patient of yours? I mean, you undiagnosed, which I absolutely freaking love because I really do believe when they place a label on you, when they pin that to your clothing and they pin it to your skin and they sew it into your heart, that it
No,
is
no, no.
really,
That
really
isn't
hard.
really, let's be careful. That isn't really how it happens. They don't pin it on you, they don't place it on you, and they don't sew it into your heart. You accept it, agree to
Oh,
it, do your own sewing.
yes. Okay, that right there. They offer it to you and you take it and say, "Yes,
That's
this is who I
different. That's
am."
different than blaming them for giving it to
Totally
you.
different. Holy
Yeah,
shit, totally
yeah,
different.
that's right.
Oh my god, the my mind just exploded. How do you undo all of that? How, right? Because we're all given labels from the second we're born until whenever. How do you undo that?
Yeah, it's not a simple question. So here's the point. It's a mindset thing more than anything because ultimately what most people don't know, most of your listeners won't really don't realize. And I always leave a disclaimer in every podcast. I've done a few hundred podcasts, and I just want to make sure that people hear the following, which is there's a group out there of your listenership who are very happy to have their diagnosis and very happy to have their therapist and very happy to have their treatment plan and extremely happy to have their medication regimen. And they think that they, couldn't have lived without it and it's saving their lives and they wouldn't
Agreed.
trade it
Yeah.
for anything. And that group, here's what I have to say to that group. Please, please, please continue doing what you're doing. No kidding. Absolutely
Yeah.
no argument
No,
here. I don't
agree.
have an argument with it. And here's the reason. If you have reached a level in any area of life where you wouldn't trade what you have for even any upgrade,
Yes.
congratulations. That is worth embracing at a very high level. And if you have reached that point inside of your mental health where you wouldn't want to trade what you have, this is the best it's going to get, and you couldn't be happier, then by all means, keep doing what you're doing. This conversation is for the tens, if not hundreds of millions of people who do not believe that way about their own mental health treatment, who
I
believe that they've
love
been
that
misdiagnosed.
disclaimer.
It's really important. It's really critical because I really mean it. Love and more power to the people who are happy with where they're going. It's not about arguing that you're doing something wrong. I'm not telling you to do it different. Please do it the same for real. And I will
Agreed.
support you doing the same. The idea here is the mindset of undiagnosing is difficult. And here's the thing. We are very programmed in many ways to be disinterested in taking responsibility for the parts of our life that aren't going the way that we wished. So
Can you say
when
that again? Did you just say disinterested in accepting?
yeah, disinterested in accepting responsibility for the parts of our life that aren't going the way that we wished. The clumsy bumbling that we do, the inadvertent pain that we cause others, the things that we do that are unhealthy, or we do them over and over again and they continue to produce negative results. Those things, which us humans do regularly, we would rather not be responsible for those things. Like, we would rather find what the hell's wrong with me that I continue to do this thing that is clumsy and bumbling and hurts myself or another. Like, why? Why? What's wrong with me?
Ooh, like the reason is outside of us.
That the reason very similar, yeah, in some ways very similar to what we had just said, which is this idea of our diagnosis outside of us. If we can say
Right.
something like, honey, I learned that wasn't me, that was my ADHD. That wasn't me, that was my
Yes, 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 yes.
That wasn't me. That's my post-traumatic stress disorder. Did you know I have social anxiety? That wasn't me. That was my social anxiety. Do you realize I'm on the spectrum? I have autistic spectrum disorder. Like you can expect me to be a little bit odd in a crowd. I already know. Do you understand, boss? I have ADHD and therefore I can't bring my work in on time. It's like,
Yeah. My
if
husband's a
I
professor, and yes, so we live with that.
Yeah, we all are living with that, and we're living with this idea of relinquishing responsibility for our life being a very attractive way to go. Psychiatry offers that. When people come to see a psychiatrist, they don't come to find out if there's something wrong with them. What they do is they come to find out what's wrong with them. They've already determined that there's something wrong with them, and they only
Mm.
want the label. It's the only subspecialty in all of medicine that if I tell somebody that they're okay, they get pissed. They're like, "Why did I come to see you?"
That's right. This is a waste of time and money.
A
I
waste of
want
time
give
and
me my
money.
fix.
But if you tell a cardiologist, if you go to a cardiologist and he says you're okay, you're like excited. An
I'll pay you
oncologist, it's a
double.
good
Thank
day.
you.
Yeah, thanks for all good. But in psychiatry, we don't get that. And not only do we not get that, because here's the corollary. Most people don't realize is every single time that anybody, including you or anyone, went to a psychiatrist, they got a diagnosis that day that is in their chart to stay.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere.
Permanent record.
Permanent record on the first
Yeah.
visit.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
going to get a few visits before you get a diagnosis. In order for that psychiatrist to get paid, he needs to give you a diagnosis. I say he, of course it could be he or she, but you get my point. They need to give you a diagnosis. So how do we undiagnose it? It's not even removable. I can't even go back as a doctor and remove a diagnosis that another doctor gave you 25 years ago. I can't do that. No, it's not doable. Once that diagnosis is there, it's really there. And by the way, it can get in the way of things in your life. It can get in the way of employment should they pursue that. It can certainly get in the way of life insurance if they pursue that. It can get in the
Yeah.
way even with one silly visit. So how do we get to the point that there's no diagnosis? How do we get to the point of undiagnosing? It's in the mindset. It's in realizing in the very beginning that there was nothing wrong with you in the first place, even though you went and got confirmation that there was. There was never anything wrong with you. We don't blame a log for burning in the fire. And as Krishnamurti said, Jiddu Krishnamurti, one of my now deceased mentors, he said, "It is no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Very similar point about the log, that it's okay to be really nervous. It's okay to be really afraid. It's okay to be very depressed. It's okay to feel completely aimless. It's okay to be totally distracted. It's okay to have multiple thoughts at the same time. It's okay to have your intuition running the show. It's okay to not feel good in a social situation. It's all okay. It's called humanity. That's what happens. Now, if we want to latch on some alphabet soup based diagnosis with any of those conditions, we can do so. And all you have to do to get one is knock on the door of the mental health industry. And as soon as you get that, you'll get a diagnosis. If you say, I have fear of pending doom, boom, we got the diagnosis for that. I have racing thoughts. Boom, we have the diagnosis for that. I feel silly in a crowd. Boom, I have a memory of some serious, horrible things that happened in my life. Boom, we have a diagnosis. And we have a diagnosis for you. And once we give you the diagnosis, then there's a prefabricated treatment plan that's associated with that diagnosis that we are forced to give you. We are forced to give you, because doing anything different would be malpractice.
Right, right.
It's the evidence-based material is that if I call you PTSD, there's a certain set of treatment plans that I can consider, only a few, and then that's it. And if I don't do those, I'm apparently an inadequate physician or an inadequate clinician. When in reality, what's really here to do, more than anything, has nothing to do with your diagnosis that I might give to you that you agree to take on, or any kind of treatment plan, any kind of therapy plan, or any kind of medication plan, which when I give to you, you still have the choice whether or not to follow through with it. So if I give you a piece of paper that has a prescription on it, it is 100% in your hands whether or not you go fill that thing. And after you fill it, it remains 100% in your hands whether or not you eat it next morning. And after you eat it next morning, it remains in your hands whether or not you eat it the next day. And it always remains in your hands. Now, when we really start getting that, what's really important is giving the sovereignty and agency back to a person who has pretended to relinquish it. Like, that's all that's really here. It's like it's been yours the whole time. Just because you pretended to give it to me and I pretended to accept it doesn't mean that I have sovereignty over your life. Your life is your life. I promise. I have nothing to do with your next move. Your next move is up to you. Now, the funny thing about psychiatry, really absolutely far from funny, is that the world sees us as being liable in that way as well. So for the defense of psychiatry,
Yeah,
here's
that's
one thing
crazy.
that's saying. Yeah, if someone comes to my office and they see me, and even if I spend like significant time with them, an hour and a half, whatever, and I get to know them, and then I prescribe or don't prescribe some sort of treatment plan, or tell them they're okay, or tell them they're not okay, or we'll give them some alphabet soup of a diagnosis and some prescriptions or whatever happens. If 4 weeks from then they decide to throw a hand grenade into a McDonald's, I will be liable. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I'm liable for somebody 4 weeks after I see. I'm never liable for anybody, even when I'm in their presence. How can I be liable for somebody 4 weeks after I see them because I somehow did whatever I did or didn't do whatever I didn't do? So how do we get to undiagnosing? How we get to undiagnosing it's a really interesting history how I got to this question, I think. That was in 2006. That was 15 years into my career. I decided that all this duplicity wasn't going to work for me, and I had to start doing something that was more aligned with my soul. So I had 2,000 people in my practice, or so, 2,000 approximately, and I took a big chunk of them off their medication with their consent. A big chunk of them took them off their medication, and in that process, took them off of their diagnosis. And when I took them off their medication, they got better, way better, reliably better, profoundly better, predictably better, way, way, way better off their medication, reliably. So much so that their diagnosis frequently and almost reliably disappeared. The thing they thought they were taking the medicine for disappeared, because the medications actually induce, increase, perpetuate, or in fact cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. So it's not the medication's fault. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah, yeah.
blame a piece of plastic for your trouble. It's not a thing. It's like blaming rat poison. You don't blame rat poison for anything. Rat poison's just a thing. It can't do anything. So let's be careful not to blame the medicine. So I started looking at when I started realizing this, I wanted to scream it from the mountaintops to the entire village, like, we need to stop doing this. But that didn't work because it was a little bit too violent. So I had to back off and kind of look at how am I going to get this point across? Where is the entryway into the cycle? And I saw it wasn't the pills. It's not this thing called Big Pharma because Big Pharma doesn't even exist. I tried to call Big Pharma yesterday. I couldn't find a phone number.
Yeah, there is none.
There's no Big Pharma.
Mm-mm.
There's
No.
no medical industry. I tried to call the medical industry. What I tried to call the insurance industry.
But yeah.
I still no phone number. I'm still looking like, wow, I tried to email insurance industry. And no, it couldn't happen. It's not my doctors. It's not my doctors. My doctors went to medical school so that they could get this piece of paper that allows them to do doctor stuff.
Yeah.
It's not them. So where is the entry point? Where is the point where we get to start doing something? And you back off and you back off and you back off, and then you realize that the entry point is that we are committed to thinking that there's something wrong with us. If we didn't think that there was something wrong with us, then we wouldn't go to the doctor. If we didn't go to the doctor, then we wouldn't get these alphabet soup diagnoses. If we didn't get
Right.
these alphabet soup diagnoses, we wouldn't get the treatment plan. If we didn't get the treatment plan, we wouldn't get a prescription. If we wouldn't get a prescription, we wouldn't get medication. If we wouldn't get medication, we wouldn't have to eat it. And it's not just in the medication. The treatments itself, unfortunately, the therapies and the treatments themselves are also designed to perpetuate that
Mhm.
dependency on that relationship.
Yeah,
There is
agreed.
a power gradient that gets developed where
Mhm.
I, the clinician, have something that you, the patient, the client needs. And in that power gradient, there's a dependency that gets created. I got to go to therapy tomorrow. I got to go to get that, whatever I have.
Yeah.
And it's not meant to work itself out of a job. Although it sometimes occurs, the therapy is not meant to actually heal and cure and give you capacity to re-own your sovereign agency. But what can happen is that when you start realizing there's nothing wrong with you and that looking for assistance is not the same as having something wrong with you. Let's make that very clear. We can help each other without one person having something wrong with them. There is assistance. This human life of ours is difficult. The way that we connect with each other is a massive assistance. In fact, human connection, getting someone to resonate with you, to actually get you, to actually hear you, to be aligned with you, see you for who you are, and likewise for you to do the same with another, that's profound therapy at the highest level. There's no such thing there's nothing, literally nothing in the world more powerful than that. If you think you have something more powerful than that, please tell me because I'm going to start doing whatever that is for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And when you see, this is what makes this so interesting to me is that me stating this is not very revolutionary ultimately, is it? You knew this when you were 2.
Heck yeah.
We all knew this when we were 2.
Yes.
It's not revolutionary. So one of the weirdest things about my take on all this stuff is that people treat it like it's so new. It's like there's nothing new about this, and I didn't learn it from the journals. I didn't learn it from medical school. I didn't learn it from, in the hospital. Yeah, a little bit, I suppose. Everywhere you go, you can realize that when you make an effort to harmonically resonate with another human being, a profound sense of healing takes place for both of you. It's just the way it
Mhm.
is. It's just the way it is. Sorry, that's just the way that it is. It's just the way that it is, and we're all trained to do it. You do not have to have initials at the end of your name to be good at that. And in fact, a case could be made that if you do have initials at the end of your name, it's less likely that you're capable of
Mm.
doing that because you've been hiding in many cases behind that sense of a veneer of a persona built on your initials. I invite you to be very careful to not hide behind those powerful initials. I have a pair as well. and be very careful not to hide behind those and bring that humanity out so that you can connect with another person so that, in fact, both of you can heal. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you don't need healing, but they do, because that's not true either. We are humans bumbling, stumbling, tumbling through a difficult, challenging, obstacle filled world without a recipe book, without a template, without an owner's manual, and without even an understanding of what normal looks like. We don't
Mhm.
even know what normal is, and we have the audacity to call people abnormal. Where does that come from?
I have long held the belief that those who are considered abnormal are probably just better than me.
It's
Like, I
true.
absolutely have something to learn from them. Our daughter our daughter was diagnosed in 2nd grade with ADHD, and the doctor said, "She has ADHD, she just doesn't have the hyperactivity component of it." And I
AD.
said, "Okay, so she has ADD." "Yes, but everything gets diagnosed as ADHD so that we can prescribe this medication and then these therapies." And I said, "Okay, okay,
That's pretty
except."
twisted too.
Yeah. And I said, Okay, I'm hearing your words. I just don't happen to agree that she's deficient in anything. I just don't believe that in any capacity because I look at her and she's very intelligent and
Yeah.
very imaginative and creative. And I said, so I started thinking, let's look at her as a person. What does she enjoy doing? How can we make her not feel like an outsider, but instead feel maybe more included in her life? And so I started to, and she was a very good, very young, but she was a very good violinist for such a young age. And I thought, well, if she has a proficiency in that, I know that there are certain musics that can help stimulate different sections of the brain. I wonder if maybe that would help. So I start doing a deep dive into the research of different composers and what they do and blah 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 blah. And then I ask her teacher, "Could you please, let's see what this does. Let's just see." And she starts playing some Beethoven and some Mozart, and I'm watching her never have to be reminded to practice, never
Yeah.
never
That's
being
right.
told, like, in actuality, I probably had to tell her, we have to eat now. Do you think you could
Yeah.
stop playing?" You know,
Right.
and really find the things that made her joyful. And through that avenue, I actually found this brain retraining that used classical music combined with a metronome and physical movement that started to help her identify numbers because that's really the only deficiency, air quoting listeners, deficiency that she maybe had was literally being able to see a number on a piece of paper and have it register in her brain as that number.
Mhm. Yeah.
But when she got to do a whole bunch of stuff that she enjoyed doing, that got to regulate her brain in another way and create different neural pathways, what's the result? These numbers are no longer jumbled and bouncing around a piece of paper. She's able to do math and she's able to focus
Yeah. Yeah.
without medication and without a label. So she heard the doctor say that. And I said to her, "It's just letters. Just like your name is letters that just happen to spell out Hannah. These are just letters that spell out something else. And like it's perfectly fine. But how about we just focus on what maybe makes you happy?"
Yeah. Yeah. We're not, we, again, were asked to do things very early on. I thought that when I was a child and I had these 2 older brothers and my parents, I used to watch, they were 10 and 14 when I was born. So there was a fair amount of chaos, disarray, and conflict in my home. And I used to watch them from my playpen talk to each other or scream at each other or do whatever
Right.
they were doing with each other and wishing that I someday could learn how to communicate. And I was pretty sure that that would happen in school. I felt like that was the whole purpose of school. I mean, what else
Yeah,
could school
no.
teach you if it wasn't communication? And so I went to school very precocious, extremely precocious, because I had these 2 brothers who fed me and I knew things that none of my peers knew. I knew about a little bit about sex and drugs and rock and roll and war, and I knew about writing and reading and mathematics before I even arrived in kindergarten. I knew stuff like that. And so I guess I would say retrospectively that I was a little bored, but I really wanted to communicate. I was like a very talkative. And there's no teacher who in elementary school who forgot having Fred as a student. I'm pretty positive about that. And, I was told in 1st grade when I thought that I was just learning how to communicate, like, just kind of banging on the keys, "This is how you communicate, to sit down, be quiet, do as I say,
Yes.
don't do as you don't get to walk around, you don't get to talk." And it's like, "Wow, squelched." Like, there's no open
Yes.
discourse here at all. And then it got worse in 1st grade and then even worse in 2nd grade, and I was like, "Wow, I'm being asked to actually mute myself as a way of being someone that I'm not, as a like, choosing to be someone that I'm not in order to protect the person that I am." In the meantime, being asked to look at a whiteboard with some stuff on there that is completely impertinent and irrelevant, that I don't have any interest in whatsoever, and
Right.
decide that I need to become interested in stuff that I'm not interested in. Now, this is a very distracting world. Have you noticed there's lots of distractions? There's lots of things going on. We're being pulled in multiple hundreds of different directions all day, every day. Literally hundreds of different directions all day, every day. And is there 100 reasons to be distracted? There's, of course we're distracted. It's like, do you want to know that I think pretty much, and I don't mean this to be like too silly. I think every single person in the United States could be diagnosed with attention deficit disorder if you chose to do that.
Agreed.
So,
100%.
but it isn't about having a disorder. It's about the fact that we don't blame a log for burning in a fire.
Yes.
That's what's here. The world is so distracting. So if you're distracted, welcome to humanity is what we're talking about. And welcome to humanity is the name of my brand. And it really fits really nicely. That's who Fred is. And that was what I designed in 2017 or so, which this idea, when it came down, it was like, okay, that's really what I mean to say. And that it's almost the right answer to every single human experience, good, bad, and ugly.
Mm.
Welcome to humanity is an okay answer to whatever that is. Not in a condescending way, in an embracing way, in a fraternal way, in a kind of a tribal way. Like, I got it. Welcome to humanity. Like, whoa, this just happened. Welcome to humanity. That happened for you. Welcome to humanity. So we start getting that welcome to humanity is what's really here. We have the opportunity to resonate with each other. We have the opportunity to actually interact with each other one way or another, whether that's through words and listening or through using any of our other creative ways of, performing our visual
Mhm.
arts, art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening are different ways to communicate with each other that I focus on in my first book called Creative 8. And then Find Your True Voice is my second book, because you can hear that what we really need to do is move the things out of the way that are in the way of us being our true and honest, authentic core self. There are things in the way. It isn't like we need to go searching out there for what's inside here. It's here. It's been here the whole time. It's that same thing that's been here the whole time. You don't have to go out there to find out who you are. You're already here. You've just been covered over by some muck and some mud and some rust and some cobwebs. And if we can wash over that, if we can clean that up, you'll find yourself coming back to your true frequency. And when in fact you get close enough to your true frequency, you start resonating like a tuning fork with the
Yeah.
rest of humanity. And
Yeah.
in that process, boom, now we're looking at human connection again, and at being at the core center of all healing.
I love the simplicity in all of that. Welcome to humanity. That's all inclusive. Your experience is totally normal. That's
Exactly.
like the whole point of Find Your Flow, is to normalize the human experience, the healing journey. We're just here doing what's right for us, and what's
Exactly.
right for me may not be right for you.
It won't be,
You do
right?
you. And as long as
Yeah.
you are like your best, that yay, I'm going to
Yay.
celebrate that. Like, let's just all shoot for that. Because
Exactly.
then that takes all of that judgment and negativity out of everything, and opens up the ability to have real connection, real conversation. It's there really is. This alone, this amount of time that we have spent together, it does feel like therapy in the best sense of it.
Yeah, it's
I'm
how it
not
works,
coming
you know?
away feeling like I'm exhausted. I need to go lay down. I just figured out 5,000 things that are wrong with me. There's nothing freaking wrong with me.
That's right. That's exactly right. There's nothing freaking wrong with you. It's exactly right. And when you can really get that, and sometimes it's just a flyby experience because one of the things that's really clear about humanity is that we do share this need to think that there's something wrong with us. So
Yeah.
each one of us thinks in reality, we can point to the thing that has us be different than everybody else. We all think we're different than everybody else and that we're something wrong with us, to the point that you could even make a case that if you think there's something wrong with you, that's a sign of being normal. It's like super awesome to think it that
I
way.
mean,
And there's
100%. If everybody on this planet thinks that they're wrong, think that there's something different about
and it's
them,
normal.
that's the normal, everybody.
Exactly.
Let's not argue about how we're different and
Exactly.
what is wrong. Just
Yeah.
accept that everybody is here doing the exact same thing, and it makes life so much easier. Oh my God, Dr. Fred, thank you so much for spending time
You're
with
welcome.
me.
You're welcome. It was great.
Listeners, welcome to humanity.
Mhm.
How about that? Embrace who you are, embrace how normal your experience is, and just find the other people who can validate that and make you feel really freaking good. And Dr.
Yeah.
Fred is one of them. So, Dr. Fred, real quick, I will just ask you to close this our time together, our session. Let's close this out with where can listeners find you? How can they learn from you? How can they work with you?
Well, the best place to find me, I think this the site that's the best is the one called Dr. Fred, drfred360.com. Drfred360.com is where you can get access to everything I've ever done. You can get all my podcasts, you get some freebies, you get access to my books, you get access to my keynotes, you get a bunch of you get access to me. You can set up a contact with me. I'd be glad to have a conversation with any of your listeners about what's going on in their world and how we might be able to work together. And if it's not me, that's fine. I know a lot of people. I've been in the field for 46 years. And, things that like ways to help manage getting your life reoptimized or realigned. Because look, it's very easy to fall out of balance. Life is hard. It's really hard. It really is. It's very challenging. It's very challenging that we live in this world as we do. By the way, it's always been challenging. It's not more challenging now. It's more challenging. It seems like it's getting increasingly challenging, but it's always seemed like it was getting increasingly challenging. No matter what era you lived in or what culture you lived in, it's always been deeply challenging. And it's
Normal.
deeply challenging right now.
Hey, welcome to humanity.
Welcome to humanity is exactly right. So the best ways to find me is over there, and that's how you can book a call as well as see all the things that I've done over time. And it's a pretty cool site, drfred360.com. I also have my main site, which is welcometohumanity.net. That's my brand, and that's most of the Dr. Fred 360 points to a lot of places on that page. But there's a lot of things going on in there. The Moss method is outlined there, and you can see the Undoctor Reset is also a space where I'm helping people undiagnose themselves, unmedicate themselves, and then undoctrinate themselves and pull themselves out of the psychiatric industrial complex forever, so that you never have to see a mental health provider ever again for your own sanctity. Um, and then I troll around social media. I'm not that proud of it, but I do troll around on Facebook, which I literally despise, but somehow find myself there every day. And I troll around on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn more than the others. It's just a place to be cogent and smooth, and it has a flow of its own that is not necessarily toxic. And
Mhm.
I like LinkedIn for that reason. So I suppose those are my two favorite social medias. And yeah, more than interested in talking to any of your listeners or about themselves, about their parents, about their kids, about their friends, about their colleagues, about their doctors, about life. It doesn't matter. All those things are fair game, because they're all part of humanity. And that's what we have to deal with together.
Fantastic. And listeners, all of that will be in the show notes. So just scroll on down. You'll be able to click on that very easily. Once again, Dr. Fred, thank you so much for being here with me. Thanks for this amazing conversation and truly making me teary eyed, just at the acceptance of how normal life is. Thank you. Breath of fresh air. Thank you. Okay, that's it, listener. Before you go, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and set your notifications to never miss an episode. If you'd like even more with me, come on over to nagarelife.com. And if you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, go on and share it. Share it with somebody that you think would enjoy it as well. All right, I'll see you next time.